Hey guys, welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Becca and today I am going to be sharing with you some tips to make big books less intimidating. So something that you guys pick up on a lot and something that I do also get frequently asked is how I manage to read so many books, how I manage to maintain reading around 10 books per month whilst I'm also reading really thick and really long fantasy books. Now there are a few different ways that I do it. There are a few different tips and tricks that I'm going to be sharing with you guys today that help me to read big books and not be intimidated by them. Some of these tips are going to contradict each other a little bit. The reason for that is that in 2020 I became self-employed. So the ways that I used to make sure that I read a lot of books back when I had an office job are a little bit different now that I'm maintaining my own schedule. So there are a couple that will go against each other. However, I do believe that you will still find one or the other helpful depending on what kind of person you are, what kind of schedule you have, what your reading pace is, etc. Now I have been regularly reading big books for at least a year and a half now, I want to say. Over these last 2 years I have been transitioning more into adult fantasy, into more dense fantasy, into higher fantasy than I was reading previously, and with that sadly generally does come a hefty page count. Now I adore big books and for me they are my favorites. Yes, I do still get a little bit intimidated when I'm looking at a thick book, but for me when I look at a big book I'm seeing intricate magic systems, I'm seeing lush expansive worlds, I'm seeing tons of character building that mean that by the time I get to the end of the book or even the end of the series I am going to feel like this book has really impacted me, it's going to stick with me, I'm going to feel connected to the characters as though they're real people. So even though this wasn't a tip that I was actually going to talk about in this video, I guess the first thing you could do is look at how you view big books. Do you see them as a challenge that needs to be accomplished, something that's difficult, something you don't want to do, or do you see them as an opportunity to dive into a really great story? So getting into my little tips and tricks, the first one is quite a simple one. It is one that you will have heard many places before, but that is to section the book off. If you are a slow reader or you have a busy schedule so you don't have too much time to read, then I would advise sectioning the book off. A lot of people do it as like 50 pages a day, some people do like 100 pages a week. Essentially whatever works for your reading pace. Now if you don't know what your usual daily reading pace is, then I would advise that you add up all of the pages that you read in a month, divide it by the number of days and find out how many pages you tend to read in one day on average. Then you can work it out from there. Whether you want to dedicate all of your daily reading time to that one book or whether you want to move on to my second tip, which is to read other books alongside it, is completely up to you. But once you have worked out your average daily page count, you will be able to split the book down however you wish, however you feel is best. Now my second tip, as I just mentioned, is to read other books alongside it. Now this is something that I used to do when I had an office job because I would have 2 books on the go at all times. I would have a book that I took with me to work every day that I would read in the morning if I got there a little bit early, and that I would also read on my lunch break, and then I would have another book that I read when I was at home. So if that is something that you do, or if it is something that you can do, you may want to do this with a big book. So you have maybe your big book at work and you can read a couple of chapters every day. If you commute, that is also great reading time, providing you can concentrate in that environment. And then you could read other shorter, faster paced, just different books on an evening. Now what I found this did for me was really helped with my motivation because I wasn't feeling slumpy because I hadn't finished a book in a while. Now it sounds really superficial, like oh my god I need to read all of the books and I need to read really quickly, but reading a big book, especially if it is a dense high fantasy, can definitely make you feel slumpy. It can definitely slow you down. So I found that reading another book alongside would really help with that because I would finish multiple average size books in the space of time that it also took me to read a big book. Now the tip that I have that contradicts the previous two is to set aside a small amount of time to tackle this big book. Now this is something that I do more frequently now that I don't have an office job and I'm working from home all the time. A great example is that in exactly 2 weeks I have a live show for Royal Assassin by Robin Hobb, which is around 650 pages I believe. I have still yet to start that book. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be setting aside a week just to focus on that book. I will get the page count for the book, I will work out how many pages I need to read per day to have it read by the date of the live show, and I will pretty much stick to that. You can split this down into any time period that you find attainable. A week will work for me. Maybe you have a lot of time to read on the weekend, so you think that for the 2 days of the weekend you are just going to read this book exclusively until it is done. Another Another way that you could do this is to participate in a 24-hour readathon. I love 24-hour readathons. I do struggle with concentrating on a book for an extended period of time. I'm one of those people who tends to read 50 pages, then get up and do something else. But in a 24-hour readathon environment, I will sit and I will try to read as much of my book as I can in that 24-hour period. And you also have a great support system with other people who are participating in the readathon who are reading along with you and can cheer you on. Now, if you are looking to participate in a 24-hour readathon, I'm sure you will be able to find some. There are quite a lot that go along with month-long readathons these days. However, if you are unaware of any 24-hour readathons that are going on, I do have two that I can recommend for you guys. One is hosted by Brit from Basically Brit. That is called the Basically Readathon, and you read the oldest book on your TBR for 24 hours, or you just read whatever you want over 24 hours. And the second is the Readathon, which is hosted by Jade from JD Ray Reads. That one is super chill, literally just grab a book, read for 24 hours. Both Brit and Jade have started doing 24-hour readathons quite recently. I will link both of them down below so that you can find out more information. Be sure to check Twitter as well for updates, but their readathons do tend to happen around once a month to every 6 weeks at the moment. Now, speaking of having a great community to cheer you along as you tackle your big book, my next tip is to join a book club or a read-along that are specifically targeting big books. Now, my book club, the Catch Up Book Club, does do this. We are currently tackling Robin Hobb's Realm of the Elderling series on a 2-month per book schedule. This is absolutely perfect no matter what your reading pace is, because you can stretch that book out over the 2 months. You can read it in the 2 days before the live show, you can stretch it across a week, and having a book club read-along environment means that you are being held accountable for tackling these tomes, continuing with the series, and making sure you read at least one big book every 2 months. We do also have a Discord where you can talk about the book as you are reading it, which means that you have a support system there of a whole bunch of people who are doing exactly the same thing as you and are dying to talk about the book that we are all reading. And of course, I will link the Discord for Elderling Long down below in case you are participating and missed out on the announcement that we have there. Similarly to Catch Up Book Club and Elderling Long, at the moment we also have the Royally Booked Club and Cosmere Along, which is focusing on tackling the majority of Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere books. I'm co-hosting that, but it was put together by Rachel from Rachael Marie, and it is another instance of a great read along with 6 to 8 week schedule where you read a big book in that time period. We have a live show. There's a whole bunch of co-hosts with a different amount of experience and knowledge on high fantasy, and there is also a Discord for you to share your thoughts. Now, obviously those read alongs are already in progress, so it's a little bit hard to catch up and jump in right now. However, if you just want to focus on reading bigger books or high fantasy, I am aware of a couple of other book clubs. The first one is the Name of the Book Club that is hosted by Piera Ford and Kaz from Little Book Owl. They pretty much read exclusively high fantasy, so the books tend to be a little bit thicker. And also one of my co-hosts for Elderling Long, Cass from What Cass Read, has her own book club where she tackles exclusively chunky books. And if joining a big read along or a book club is not your scene because you don't want that extra pressure, you could just think about organizing a buddy read between a small group of people where you will all tackle the book at your own pace. You can have daily check-ins, weekly check-ins, however often you would like to do it. And once again, that sense of community and having people reading the same book as you should help to spur you along a little bit if you're feeling slumpy or you're a little bit intimidated by your big book. Now, with that last one, I do understand that not everybody knows people who read and also reads the same books as them, and not everybody has a platform where they are able to shout out and garner interest in this and actually gather a group of people. However, if you do have a book in mind that you would like to tackle and you would like a small group of people to buddy read with and are unsure how to go about it, if you at me on Twitter looking for people to join buddy reads of this nature, I would be happy to retweet them so that you can find other people who may be interested in that. Now, my last tip is a little bit of a weird one. It does apply especially to high fantasy, but I would recommend it no matter what your reading pace is, and that is to read the first 100 to 150 pages as quickly as you possibly can. Now, by that I don't mean speed read it, but I mean instead of reading 20 pages a day or 50 pages a day, read at your normal reading pace to get through those first 100 to 150 pages at a slightly accelerated schedule. Now, the reason I say this is because I have always found with fantasy that it takes me 100 to 200 pages to get into the plot. What you're going to find in these first 100 pages is a whole ton of world building, sometimes even info dumping. You're going to be meeting people that you literally do not care about because you have only just met them. You're going to be finding out about them, their backstories, the magic systems, what magic they have, their personal relationships, and all of that kind of stuff. And it cannot always be motivating to read. Now, the world building section of a book is sometimes my favorite when I look on it with hindsight after I finish the book, but when you are just going into a brand new book or a brand new series and you don't really know what's going on, it can be a little bit daunting. It can be very intense. It can give you a headache. It can fill your brain with all this information that you just cannot comprehend right now. So I would advise that you try and get through that beginning section of the book pretty quickly. After that, the plot should be starting to come in and you should be starting to feel a little bit more motivated as you are reading. And a little bonus tip that goes along with that is maybe to make notes. If you are somebody who does not retain a lot of information while reading, if you are planning on making a review after you have read the book, or if you're planning on reading the book on an extended schedule, it may be handy to have a notebook and a pen close by so you can make note of things like who's related to who, what part of the magic system does what, and all of that jazz. But those are all of the tips that I have on how to make big books less intimidating. Please let me know in the comments if any of these work out for you. Please let me know if you have any additional tips that I haven't covered here. And also please let me know if you would like me to make any additional videos on big books. I have had somebody ask me to make a video on my big book collection, but I have a lot of big books. So maybe you guys could let me know what you actually consider to be a big book. Is it over 500 pages? Is it over 600? And also what kind of things you would like to see. Would you like to see my big book TBR? Would you like to see my favorite big books? Or would you just like to see all of the big books that I own? But that is about it from me today, guys. So please don't forget to like this video if you liked it and subscribe if you want to. If you head to my description box, you will find links to everything I've mentioned today, as well as links to my Goodreads, Instagram and Twitter if you'd like to follow me on any of those, and a link to my Bookish body butter and candle website, the Instagram for that, and 10% off discount code. But that's it from me today, guys. Bye!
Oh, you bite your friend like chocolate. You say you will go where nobody knows, with guns hidden under our petticoats. We're never gonna quit it, no, we're never gonna quit it, no.